Hey Vogue.
Hi Vogue.
Hey, what's up, Vogue?
Hello and welcome to the Get Vogued Podcast, a sparkly addition to getvogued.com. I'm Kelsey Savin, your Australian and now London-based host, and I will be discussing all things fashion, marketing, and sustainability. I hope you're ready to get vogued. Hello everyone, Kelsey here. This conversation was recorded over Zoom between London and Budapest. I hope you enjoy this episode. Get vogued. Welcome back everybody to episode 3 of Conversations with Kelsey, a Get Vogued podcast. Today we will be diving into sustainability and luxury fashion from a marketing point of view. I have a lovely co-host with me. Her name is Serafina Goldabina, and I really hope I've pronounced that correctly. And she is currently studying in Budapest. It's a funny story how we met, actually. Serafina found me on Clubhouse, which to me is kind of hilarious because I have the lump sum of about 12 followers on there. And she was researching people to interview for her dissertation. So we both share a huge passion for luxury and sustainable fashion. So it's great to have her on the podcast today.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for having me, Kelsey. My name is Serafina, and currently I'm finishing my master degree in marketing here in Budapest. And I'm researching sustainable opportunities in luxury sector, in luxury fashion sector. And yeah, that's why I had some of the interviews already. I just wanted to get more insights and more information for my study. So I'm really excited, and I hope this will be interesting for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we had our interview, I think it's a couple of weeks ago now, I thought, wow, we're so on the same page with sustainability and luxury fashion. Why not turn this into a podcast? So here we are. So I think the first thing we might kind of chat about is what we're finding interesting at the moment, and if there's any news articles we've read in this space that we wanted to talk about. So the first one that I have found was Vogue Business posted an article. It was actually the end of last year, but there's been some updates to it. So it was on the rise of venture capital funding for leather alternatives. So there are 3 main materials mentioned in the article. MycoWorks introduced a $45 million Series B financing in November to scale up its production of its biomaterial called Reishi. So REISHI, made from fine mycelium, which is actually from mushrooms. Bolt Threads, who created one of the most famous leather alternatives, Milo, which if you're in the industry, you definitely would have heard of. And they have a $213 million venture capital funding. And thirdly, Copenhagen's Beyond Leather Materials also raised 1.1 million euros in July 2020 to fund its leather alternatives made from apple pulp. So what we kind of chatted about a couple of weeks ago was there's an interesting dynamic with these suppliers and smaller brands which are trying to be sustainable. Some smaller brands have reported trying to use this Milo material. However, they could not because they had exclusive partnerships with a consortium made up of Adidas, Kering, the Kering Group, Lululemon, and Stella McCartney. And I thought that was a really interesting, point to be made. Like the exclusivity rights of these partnerships or consortiums is kind of against the systemic goal towards sustainability. It's kind of an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, I think that's always great that we can see the positive dynamic actually of all the brands that is going sustainable. And even if it's bigger brand or if it's smaller, it's always great news. But yeah, this is an interesting topic with the partnership. I think it's a little bit like additional part of what is going on in this industry also, and it's just maybe even a different topic to research about more and to find out like what is going on exactly. But yeah, that's interesting. And about the material made of mushrooms. So recently I also saw you shared on LinkedIn the news, but I think I saw it before also somewhere that I don't know how to pronounce actually this brand.
I mean, I say Hermes, some people say Hermes, like, I just think, you can definitely take the French. Everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah, so Hermes, they made mushroom bags of the same material, I guess, that you mentioned. And that's really excitement, and it seems like it's already future. And this is great news. Also, in that article, I found out that brands such as Gucci, Versace, Vivienne Westwood, and Shrimps, they also have stopped using fur entirely. And I think this is also a nice opportunity for luxury brands and for everyone to announce this. It's really great.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a sign of the times, right? That, that Hermes, which definitely can be considered one of the most exclusive brands or luxurious brands. And, it's deeply embedded in French fashion culture. The fact that they're adopting mushroom leather or, alternative materials, I think is a really exciting opportunity. And, if one day I will be purchasing a Hermes Birkin bag, it's on my bucket list. So hopefully there is a mushroom leather alternative that I can purchase.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I also found out interesting fact that eco leather, that is this is a material, but actually it's just more of a plastic, so it's not that good to use in a production. So now we know. I also brought another news here that I found out. It's about Farfetch, which is a really big retailer of luxury brands. They are now collaborating with Thrift Plus, and this is a second-hand initiative. I think it's also great that those big brands as Farfetch, they are collaborating with such things as selling thrifted, and also the money goes to the charity, as I understood from the article. And it's also another part of the initiatives that is great to see in the world.
Absolutely. I actually hadn't heard of that before. I will definitely be checking out that article after you.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that's great. And yeah, if talking about marketing point of view, I think we know that Stella McCartney is focusing on sustainability, and actually Stella, she's trying to make sustainability her key value into her brand, which is also great, because I think the more brands share these ideas, and maybe even in their communication strategy, it's amazing, and it's always nice to more and more people know, and also their audience of Stella McCartney, they find out more news about it, or more ideas. And yeah, she also mentioned that they want people to know that they're buying something that is valuable for the planet. So and yeah, it's basically it's a news about her pop-up store, but I think it's more focusing on the marketing strategy also.
Sure. I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up, that, having sustainability in the marketing communications, but also in the production, at the essence of a brand. And, I can kind of draw on the example of, this is not luxury, but H&M and their sustainable collections, which is a very hotly discussed topic in the fashion academia and the wider industry. It kind of brings to the point, are they greenwashing? Are they not? Are they, just trying to say, sprinkle a little bit of sustainability and say, what, we're actually not a terrible not everything has to be perfect. But I think it does raise a really good point, is that people who aren't shopping solely sustainably, it actually does give them an opportunity to learn about sustainability and to be educated in that way. So I definitely think that education is such an important part of sustainable fashion.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I'm also researching in my thesis. That the more brands, no matter like if it's fast fashion or luxury, but since I'm researching this particular sector, I think the key factor is that you bring awareness to the audience, to your particular audience, whether it's more rich people or it's ordinary people. Still, it's great if a brand think about it and bring it to audience, bring it to the society. I think this is what's important in the communications in nowadays, actually.
Absolutely, and we've seen that in so many shapes and forms. So it's definitely, again, as you probably would say, another research topic we could dive into. So
Get Vogued.
Okay, so we might dive into some sustainable brands that we are really enjoying at the moment. So for me, sustainable brands, they have to kind of be like going towards meeting the majority of the UN sustainability goals in a really meaningful and actionable way. For me, my favorite ones are, conscious and sustainable, about ethical production, but also have a really high quality garment design and feel. So I think, many years ago, eco-fashion was kind of tossed aside and, it was not very trendy. So I'm so excited that it's become, a desirable brand value and attribute. So I'll give 3 of my top brands that I am loving right now. I definitely could give you a much longer list, but, for the sake of the listeners' ears, I will, I'll stick to 3. So I've definitely mentioned this brand before on the podcast, Attire the Studio. It's 100% plastic free, 100% biodegradable. There's no polyester used. And they release information of the entire supply chain. And they ensure fair and regulated working conditions. The second brand is called Maggie Marilyn, and this is a New Zealand-based brand. And what's really great about their marketing communications is they have a really clear sustainability strategy roadmap. And this is actually a downloadable document on their website, so you can really get a step-by-step view of how they're addressing, every single one of the 17 development goals from the UN. And they also have a really strict supplier code of conduct, and they just have a really beautiful product. So if you haven't seen them before, I definitely will link it in the show notes down below.
Yeah, that would be great.
Have you heard of them before?
I think I checked them after you mentioned in my interview, but before I haven't heard them.
Maybe it was the Australian and New Zealand sphere that I picked it up. And my last one is Outland Denim, which is actually an Australian-based company, which actually it uses this incredible denim finishing technology called ozone, which replaces traditional harsh chemical bleaching agents, and also uses laser technology to create like a unique, like stone washed effect almost, without the intensive water washing and heavy chemical use, which is typical of the denim industry. So I'm just going to throw some facts at you from their website. Their production uses 86% less water, 57% less energy, 83% less chemicals than usual denim production, and they are also supporting and upskilling Cambodian employees, which are in their factory. So I actually met James Bartle, who is the founder of Outland Denim, when I was back in Australia, actually in relation to researching for my dissertation. So it's a funny thing how it all comes around in circles. He told me about the social impact they're having on the Cambodian workers, and it's really truly inspiring how they're helping them, kind of upskill them and out of the poverty cycle. But what's a really great, tactic that they use is they inside of the jean pocket, they actually write a story of the Cambodian employee that actually made that pair of jeans. So it's a great emotional connection to, for the entire production line. So yeah, I think that's really it's really great tactic for sure. And again, I'll touch on a point of the challenges of small companies and the advantages of small companies, as I've given you all relatively small company examples. It's once a company starts to scale, that's when the challenges of sustainability really come in. Once more resources need to be used, there's a chance of overproduction as well, because that may be more economically viable. It's not always the case, but I definitely prefer to support the smaller brands for this reason. But yeah, I mean, did you want to chat about some of your brands as well?
I can't mention particular brands. I think I knew even some from Russia, since I'm from Russia. And they're amazing, but I'm not sure how they're doing exactly what is their production activities, because I'm not really into the news with them now. But I remember that actually on Clubhouse I met also a few people. It was a conversation in Russian, and we were talking about sustainability fashion, and there was one girl. Actually her work is to as I understood, she's also a researcher, but she helps businesses, especially from the fashion industry, to keep that sustainable track. So she is kind of like a advisor, or I would say this is the best word describing her work, and she's helping, I think, mostly little companies who are just starting, or even maybe a bigger ones, to advise them the track, how they can use the materials or the production in a more sustainable approach. And she shared some examples. I think that's great what she's doing, because she's also she's really into the topic, and she really researched a lot about the approaches that could be applied to different industries, because it's not just for the fashion, it can be for other different spheres. And that's amazing to listen to those ideas. And I think this is also great for companies maybe who are just starting to find, or maybe even not starting, but if they're already in the middle of production and some people knows them, they have audience, it's great to hire that kind of expert who can give you advices on how to be more sustainable and maybe bring more ideas to your business. That would be wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy the power of Clubhouse. Hey, the people you can get connected to. Yeah, we could definitely can link her advisory company or her page. And I definitely think, I've seen a lot more sustainable consultants pop up, not only marketing, but also production, and all the way down the value chain. So that's an interesting opportunity even for us, exiting our studies, and that could be a job opportunity for both of us. So, I mean, we talked about quite a few topics in our interview before, so we might touch on a few of them. We talked about how, if we do think it's possible to reduce the harm from fashion industry, and I think this was inclusive of luxury and fast fashion, but we definitely can speak to both separately as well. And I answered you in saying that I definitely do think that it's possible. Having a strict standard that is monitored in every single stage of the supply chain is definitely necessary, and not accepting anything less than full transparency at every stage. Easier said than done, of course, but this is definitely what makes it possible. But at the end of the day, fashion businesses exist to be profitable. I think that would be silly to ignore that. And many have realized that, the longevity of their business means, we need to start aligning with consumers' shifted values, which really, really put a heavy weight on sustainable and ethical production. So yeah, I definitely think it's very, very possible.
Yeah, and that's always great to see and to hear the news from the new brands that they're actually shifting to more and more sustainable approach in a way. And this is the news that we read also, that gives us this thought that it's possible actually, and it's happening already. So that's always great.
Absolutely. I might actually just jump to another question down the bottom, where we talked about Burberry and Gucci, and both of them have sustainable activities, whether that be collections or and I think you asked do you think they will shift their main production to a green approach, and I answered you in saying, I think this is when it will have to make the most financial sense as well. Once technologies are developed to make the entire supply chain as eco-friendly as possible, which may include, renewable energy along the line, to create in production, it definitely can be possible for the entirety. Is this going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. But this trend, quote unquote trend, of sustainability is definitely not going away, and especially with pressures from stakeholders, and also from consumers, like Generation Z, for example. They, as really see themselves as an extension of brands, and their values have to kind of align with the brand that they're wearing and showing as their identity. So anything that is greenwashing or not convincing to these consumers, more action is kind of needed in that space. Like the sustainability initiatives for Gucci, the Circular Lines collection, which has like recycled, bio-based, sustainable materials. Burberry is using packaging from recycled coffee cups, and their wool and cotton suppliers are sustainably certified. And I think this is super interesting to bring Burberry into the light of sustainability, because it was just 3 years ago they were very, very big in headlines for burning their excess stock, and I think it was something like 50 million euros or pounds. I can't remember the exact figure of excess stock. Because they thought it would be more detrimental to the brand to put it on the resale market. So, if they've come this far in 3 years, let's see will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm definitely taking an optimistic stand there, but I don't know what your thoughts are on shifting main production to totally green.
I think it can be possible, of course. I'm positive about it. But also, if comparing to fast fashion, for example, in the production itself, I think it's obvious that luxury brands are more sustainable because they use the materials that last longer, and they really invest into quality because this is what people like them for, and this is kind of the definition of a luxury. So yeah, this is obvious, but I also believe that they are, even if there's such cases as was with Burberry, that showed that like they're not really care. But I think in the future, in 2 years, right, in 3 years, they recovered from that kind of scandal. I don't know if it's scandal, but it is for their brand identity, of course, and how audience see them. So I think they can shift, or at least they can bring more ideas and more news on what is going on in the inside of their production and manufacturing. That's always nice to hear from them.
Absolutely. And just, touching on the trajectory of the next 5 to 10 years, especially in regards to sustainability and luxury industry. We've had this conversation that we think brands, have realized that profit with purpose is not like a good to have, but a must have. And particularly Generation Z consumers are able to tell purpose washing, greenwashing, and like performative solutions. And they certainly, not to use a cliche term, but vote with their dollars in favor of brands that have kind of a track record of supporting this production and ethical business practices. So also, wider marketing consumer trends. We've seen brand communications move from a monologue to a dialogue, especially with social media, and even go so far as a debate on social media. So I definitely think that consumers' inputs and the conversation that brands are having with consumers it will only grow in value and only grow in importance. So I think that if that's definitely what is front of mind for Generation Z consumers, it will only grow in the production of luxury and hopefully the entire fashion industry.
Yeah, totally. I think with the appearance of social media, even luxury brands, they started using this because they're really old brands that only were using traditional channels. And it's was interesting to see how they shift their entire marketing structure structure to new digital approaches. And this dialogue gives more ideas even to their brand and their activity, what they're doing. It's always great to switch on that conversation and to hear the audience. I think it's one of the most important things that brands can start.
Absolutely. And I think that is true to much more than just sustainability. So there was another question you asked me. How do you think luxury fashion can be more sustainable in their activity? And I think there's such a plethora of things, and we've talked about vegan materials or eco materials rather. But I definitely think one of the major trends we've seen over the past couple of years is the fashion calendar starting to become more seasonless, and streamlining the output of clothing will not only relieve the pressure on designers. I can't even begin to explain, creating spring, summer, fall, winter, pre-fall, resort, haute couture, mini collections, presentations, men and women. Like, I'm just exhausted even consuming the content as a fashion enthusiast, student, consumer. So I think that, we've already seen some brands drift away from this, from following strict micro seasons. Dries Van Noten, Gucci, Michael Kors, Saint Laurent, Giorgio Armani, they're kind of creating their own fashion calendar, and creating, I think there's a lot more space for brands to create their own rules. So I definitely think that could be a step in the right direction to targeting overproduction for sure. But if they had a focus more on sustainable collections, that definitely could aid in stepping in the right direction towards being more sustainable.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm just making notes about the ideas that we're discussing, so I can put them also into my research. I think this is interesting also to explore. I think that is the main question, like how brands can shift and how they can be more sustainable. And there's so many possibilities and so many opportunities. It's just the brand can use its own strategy, and it can pick the right for them. They're really open and free to choose their own activity. But yeah, I think that's important to focus on and to see how they do it, and maybe even in the future other brands can also see the example of those huge brands, and use it in their activity.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a super great point, leading by example. And what always pops into my head, and I'm probably going to regret saying this, but the Devil Wears Prada scene of Meryl Streep explaining how blue kind of trickles down from the runway office all the way into the department store. So I think that luxury fashion setting an example is definitely a key trend, and if they can do that with sustainability, I think that's definitely a great way to go. And speaking of luxury brands starting to be more sustainable, you asked me what's the extent that luxury brands pay attention to responsibility and accountability in fashion. And I kind of brought up that I kind of see this in two silos. One is luxury companies that were born out of purpose. So this is your Stella McCartneys, your Gabriella Hearsts, and your that's the core of their brand values is sustainability, or they have a social purpose, and they're contributing consciously to the fashion industry. But of course, we both know that the industry is still rife with greenwashing and kind of vague promises. If you go back through the past EP&L reports, environmental profit and loss reports, many companies have the same or similar goals with just pushed out dates. So the goal may have been, achieve something by 2020, and now it's kind of like, let's achieve that by 2025. And also, if there are brands which are part of conglomerates or groups, big fashion groups, there is the kind of opportunity to hide in those bigger reports what's the actual goings on of their sustainability efforts. So I think that, as I've said already, consumers are demanding higher standards and more attention is being brought to these activities, especially since the Rana Plaza disaster in 2013. And I think that, businesses are definitely noticing it's a smart decision to become more sustainable. So I think it's kind of inevitable for them to pay more attention to, investing in these kind of, new business practices.
Yeah, that's true. And also I had a thought while we were speaking about seasonless and slow fashion, is that actually now with the pandemic, we have our own consequences. Like we don't have fashion shows anymore as it used to be. So even brands, they kind of create more, of course they create digital approaches and they bring it to their brands now, and I think they also came up with new sustainable ideas, how they can bring the impact on the nature also. And that's another also news that we can read and see how brands actually act now.
Absolutely. And we kind of had the conversation of, obviously we're both very pro sustainable fashion, but we kind of wanted to look at it from, a marketing point of view. Does this really increase consumer trust, satisfaction, loyalty, etc.? And we've kind of already touched on a little bit of how consumers can now really tell if it's greenwashing, and if they can't tell, sites like Diet Prada will certainly reveal its inauthenticity, which can be very detrimental to brands. If that, there are so many cases, it's a little bit too many to count now, but transparency is definitely key, and I think in terms of customer satisfaction, especially if it aligns with personal values, to bring in a marketing term, it's definitely the self-actualization part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that just creates such a bigger bond between the consumer and brand, and creating a community there, which, as we know, can turn into customer loyalty and is more profitable. So I think that it's definitely in terms of marketing activities, very, very worthwhile doing it authentically. It's definitely a great area of interest for both of us to study and to go into. I certainly think so. But yeah, did you want to chat about anything else?
I just also had the thought about the marketing point of view, that it's if it's more trust from consumer, or if it's more satisfaction from them. I think it's as we mentioned already, that it's important to bring a conversation with the audience and with the customer, where they can actually see also the transparency of the activities, and they can speak about it, and they can have a dialogue with the brand. And social media is the fastest way, I would say, to do so. And so far we also have seen great examples how brands can interact and how customers actually reply to certain activities. That's also a part of bringing more awareness to the society. Of course, it's a bigger goal, but I think those little steps that we have, they're also important to notice and to write down for the future.
Absolutely. That brings us back to the point of, education is kind of key, and the best way to kind of get our sustainability movement going industry-wide. Well, I feel like I definitely could talk to you for many, many hours, and we definitely have before, so we'll have to try and organize you for another podcast episode.
That would be great. That would be great. I'm in my stage where I'm analyzing all that we've been spoken about with so many experts, and that's why I'm currently making notes, because I want to bring more ideas to how can I separate those ideas and that brainstorm that we have. That's always interesting to do, and I hope I can make it more structured.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
I mean, wishing you the best of luck in that process. I mean, I can't wait to read it. Actually, I think it's going to be a fantastic read. So, best of luck in developing your thesis.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope I can recover soon and I can be more, I don't know, I can talk more. You see, I can't even talk now because I'm already I still feel that sickness, that I'm getting tired super fast, and I'm sorry if I'm like a little bit strange talking.
No, honestly, it's been fabulous, and I can't wait to re-listen to everything we've talked about. But without further ado, I think I might wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me and to share with the Get Vogued community everything to do with sustainability and luxury fashion. So I hope everybody has enjoyed listening to this. You can definitely reach out to Serafima. I will put out all her LinkedIn URLs and everything in the show notes as well. So yes, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Serafima.
Thank you for having me. It really was interesting, and actually it's my first experience talking on a podcast, and it was wonderful, and I hope it was interesting to listen to.
Well, I'm very honored that you're my first guest from Budapest, and also my first Russian guest. So yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And that's the end of the latest episode of Conversations with Kelsey at Get Vogued Podcast. As always, you can reach out to me at getvogued.com or on Instagram at Kelsey_Savin or at get.vogued. Did you know we also have a YouTube and Facebook page with the handle Get Vogued by Kelsey Savin? As always, I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this or any episode, so feel free to reach out to me. Until next episode, stay sparkly.